right, just like many of you out there here, I came from the same school of mechanical alignment, and I used to do standard mechanical alignment with the PS knees, and I didn't switch over to kinematic alignment just overnight. I did take my own time and had a lot of reservations in switching, and so I started with restricted kinematic alignment, just like one of the gentlemen who asked. So I normally, measure pre-operatively. If it falls within the boundary, I would probably go with kinematic with the manual instrumentation. But then if it doesn't fall, it's beyond the boundaries, then probably I would go with my standard mechanical alignment. But then did a lot of learnings went through all the landmark papers, saw a lot of WUMEDI videos with Dr. Howell. But then finally I ended up here, met Dr. Howell in the US, and I also attended the cadaver lab courses in the US. And then since then, no looking back, I'm completely into caliper verified unrestricted kinematic alignment with the medial pivoting knee. So it's very common scenario for us that we normally end up seeing 15-degree plus varus, more than 51% of the patients, and more than 30-degree of varus is 10%. So India is really diverse, so we do come up with a lot of spectrum of deformities like this, and we are not talking about the minimal, mild amount of varus. It's like the crazy amount of deformities which we see in our day-to-day life. And then what makes very difficult, most of the time whenever I meet any of the surgeons, they say that K is not meant for Indian patients, probably because of one, constitutional alignment, number two, because of the bone defect which we see, number three is osteoporosis, number four, we see these kind of post-traumatic extra-articular deformities. So when you talk about constitutional alignment, it's pretty popular. It's very common in Asian contingent, and that's because I believe that its function forms the structure and the structure serves the function. So probably because of our own demand, our lifestyle, like squatting and sitting on the floor, and probably heavy labor work like farmers or like short, stout, obese female individuals, they are really common for these kind of constitutional alignment. But then what really happens when you actually shift it, when you do a mechanical alignment? So this is the same patient where she underwent a mechanical alignment on the left side, but then the joint lines are completely changed, and the JLOA is completely changed, and her knee phenotype has been switched from 1 to 8. And whereas when you do a kinematic alignment, you retain the joint angles, and then she still has the same phenotype. So what happens is the Oxford score, the patient actually must have had an Oxford score of approximately 20. So she did improve in the mechanical alignment on 36. This is what we call as good to great. But then when she got the right side KA, the Oxford score is 43, and then within 6 months, she achieved that same score. So many of us here are really worried about HK axis. HK, basically, we don't have a control on the HK axis when you do an unrestricted kinematic alignment. We don't have a control on what the post-op limb alignment is going to fall off. So this is a great paper from the Iran surgeon Surgeries et al. So they wanted to understand what happens with the mild varus and the severe varus. But then you note that in severe varus group, it's almost 145 patients. Their mean varus was almost 20 plus or minus 7.6 degrees. And then they left it with 7 degree of varus plus or minus 4.3 degrees. And then they found that there was no difference between the PROM scores, but most importantly, at 6-year follow-up, there's no aseptic loosening. So now comes to the bone defect. So bone defect is actually, again, a problem of mechanical alignment. So most of the time what we do is mechanical alignment asks for us to take more extra bone from the lateral side. So that actually exaggerates your tibial bone loss, and then you'll have to add a bone graft and screws or a stem. So this is one of the cases where you can see severe posteromedial bone loss, and this is the introp image. And most of the time, after doing a kinematic alignment tibial resection, you won't see a bone loss up to 10 millimeters. So makes sense, 10 millimeters is the implant thickness. So most of the time, up to 10 millimeters, just the tibial resection is more than enough for you to take care of the bone loss. And this is the X-ray. You don't need to have any stems, no screws. But then we do see much more severe bone loss as well. This is almost more than 15 millimeter of bone loss. And in these kind of cases where we'll have to, and also you have to notice that most of the time these kind of bone loss happens extremely in the eccentric, it's in the periphery. So most of the time it's just less than 1/3 is the bone loss of around 5 millimeter. And we can easily do a screws, and we can have a strut screws and fill it with a cement. So now regarding osteoporosis, just like Dr. Beanie keeps on saying that, so mechanical alignment is keeping the tibia and varus is a problem of mechanical alignment. So if you look at the studies, which philosophy actually tries to reproduce the tibia compartment forces, it's the kinematic alignment is the only one which has the current evidences which are able to reproduce the exact compartment forces between the tibiofemoral compartment. And that's actually a preventive mechanism. So I feel, I do KA for all the rheumatoid patients as well with osteoporosis. So basically it's a much more superior construct because your CAM mechanism is lesser, you're evenly loading in the extension space, and your tibial compartment forces is recreated to the natural knee joint. So this is my experience, the first initial phase of my unrestricted kinematic alignment of the 6 months cohort. So usually the mean pre-op MPTA and the LDFA and the slopes were around 83, 89 and 83.9 respectively, and the post-op remains unchanged. The only change which happened was in the HKA, which shifted from 168 to 174. So yeah, so one thing which never changed is in all this consecutive deformities, we never changed the implant. We managed only with a primary medial pivoting knee implant. And this is the same amount of soft tissue release which happened for all these kind of patients, no matter how severe is their deformities. And no more soft tissue releases. And obviously we didn't go with any SMCO, no stems, no semi-constrained implants, obviously. And then we capture all the data with our prompt software. So this is our data where we wanted to compare the Coos JR score for patients who fall within the range and who falls outside the range. So almost 40% of the patients were falling outside the range, but then the interesting part is all the patients who are outside the range, which we thought like 5 degree is the outside the range from the 90 degree, from 90, so from 180 degree. So the patients who fall outside the range actually had a better fat, much better scores. And very similarly in MPTA, almost 60% of the patients fell outside the ranges, more than 5 degrees. And then again, this is a statistically significant score, which they found, which we found was they felt much better. Their scores are much better than the in-boundary ranges. And very similar in LDFA, not much patients were outside the boundaries, but then still they also fared really well. So we just wanted to compare how is the distribution of the Indian population. These are non-OA patients published by Mulaji et al. And so our distribution post-op KA were able to match the same. The number of patients were almost close to same. They analyzed almost 250 non-OA patients, and we analyzed 250 post-op KA patients, and the distribution of the HK axis were more or less similar. So this is the matrix. You can see that the horizontal one is MPTA and the vertical one is LDFA. And these are the red ones are our post-op patients. If we had to do a restricted, so this is the restriction, which you can see the gray shaded area. So most of them actually falls outside the restricted kinematic alignment, but I don't know how much percentage, but most of them do fall outside the gray shaded area. That means I have to do some amount of soft tissue release for these patients, or I have to do some femoral adjustment. So in our results, so the Coos JS scores were not much significantly different except for the MPTA, and no difference in revision rate for 1.5 years. And then caliper verified KA-TK is applicable for any type of deformity. Our post-op range is 163 post-op HKA with MPTA of 76 and LDFA of 99. So there is a great talk which is going to come up with Dr. Jain. So why it doesn't fail when you keep the tibia and varus, but then just wanted to show a few of them. So this is a paper from Dr. Yaron Barziv where they wanted to study if the post-op MPTA more than 85 and less than 85, does it have any impact? 338 patients, mean follow-up of 3.4 years, and they found that there is no difference in the outcome scores, and then there is no difference in the tibial resorption rate, who is in the excessive group, which is 80 MPTA more than 85. And most importantly, no aseptic loosening or catastrophic failure with a minimum 2-year follow-up. So very similarly, there's another paper from Dr. Howell where this is an RSA analysis where he showed 35 patients. If there is any tibial base plate migration, RSA analysis means they places some tantalum beads intraoperatively inside the tibia, and then they study it. They take radiographs post-operatively to understand if there is a tibial base plate migration. And the tibial base plate migration was less than 0.5 millimeter, which is much lesser than the mechanical alignment. So. And also, most importantly, if you can see, the migration is much lesser as the tibia is kept in more and varus. So mind you, they can conclude that the tibial base plate migration after 1 year should allay the concern of unrestricted kinematic alignment. So keeping the tibia in varus is a problem of mechanical alignment. It's not a problem of the kinematic alignment. So I would we can definitely treat all these kind of extreme deformities in the Indian scenario as well. So what I would like to conclude is the true potential of the kinematic alignments actually comes in treating these kind of severe deformities. KA has definitely made our life much simple, and it is the best part is it's reproducible technique. And please restrict your fear of component failure to in the coronal plane to mechanical alignment. The rules of failure for mechanical alignment are different from the rules of kinematic alignment failures. So, but however, what I would like to just say here is, please don't immediately start with doing all these kind of extreme deformities. Do start with some milder deformities. Attend one of our ORs, or come to, hopefully we'll be having some kinematic cadaver labs in the near future. Please attend all that. Once you feel confident, whichever you feel as a right alignment philosophy for that patient, please perform that. Thank you so much.